All right, it looks like we're live. Well, everybody, welcome to the Resilient Living Podcast. My name is Ryan Steva. I've got Jared Wilson, my friend, here with me, and we're going to be talking today about three cheap solar options for preppers, homesteaders, and tinkerers. So we're going to go through a variety of different ideas on things that you could do with solar, things that you could pick up, in the next couple of days and do at a really affordable cost, because solar seems so expensive and so unattainable that we wanted to cover a few ways that you could actually attain solar and start using it pretty much right away. So how's it going, Jared?
It is going great. How are you?
Awesome. I'm doing pretty well. I've
Sweet.
been really excited to talk about this topic because I do a whole class on one of the three varieties of solar that we're going to do cover today. And so,
I
and
know
that's
I've been to
gone
your
over really
class.
well. Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully people have really enjoyed it because it's information that's hard to find out there on the interwebs.
It is, which is unfortunate because there's no reason for anybody to gatekeep this.
Yeah, exactly. I think maybe it's just a little bit out there, like people haven't necessarily thought of it or thought through all the different options with it. So,
Sure.
uh, before I tease people for too long, the first version that we're going to cover is direct solar. So I'm going to kind of we're going to work our way up to more complex systems, but we're going to start with the absolute most basic. Um, so the simplest version of this is a 12-volt solar panel, so a very small, inexpensive solar panel that you can grab on Amazon or even locally from a local store. Um, and you can hook that directly up to a 12-volt computer fan. And this is a really cool, simple thing you can do because the computer fan is able to handle slightly varying voltages. So
Mhm.
anywhere from about 15 down to about 11. And as you drop much below that, the computer fan just shuts off.
Right.
And so now we can cool off, a rabbit hutch or a small shed, things like that. We can use it for ventilation, and it only runs when the sun is out.
Which is when you need it.
Exactly. So you can do the same thing, not just with fans, but also with certain types of pumps. I've used these little tiny, really inexpensive, I think they're like $5 a piece, brushless DC submersible water pumps.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've really been happy with those. They last forever. When you're going super direct like this to a panel, I really like brushless motors. Um, Part of the reason is that those brushless motors, when a motor's spinning and it's got electricity going to it, if it's brushed and the voltage gets too low to spin the motor, that motor can get locked up in one spot and
Oh, yeah.
have
Right.
yeah, it can basically have arcing over the stator and the brushes. And so when you have brushless, it's electronically controlled and there's no physical connection there.
Hmm.
So brushless fans like computer fans and brushless pumps work really well with these, just a basic 12-volt solar panel.
Yeah. So, like, would you use that for like aeration in like a koi pond or something like that?
Sure. Yeah, if you used one of those pumps, if you push the water up, you could actually have it'd just be a little tiny fountain or basically something to get the water, up high enough that it would fall down and then aerate the water.
Right.
It's not going to aerate a large pond or anything like
Sure.
that, but yeah, a small koi pond, especially as like a backup. So maybe you have a
Ooh.
yeah, maybe you have a aeration system, and as a backup, in case that aeration system fails, you've got one of these always running just off of a solar panel. Um,
Sure.
that could keep fish alive during a time when maybe they otherwise wouldn't be, or they might die because you might miss it.
Right. Or if you're on vacation or whatever. Yeah.
Yep. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. Have you used any of these, or have you looked into using just direct solar panel to device?
A little bit. I was trying to remember. I was thinking about that when we talked about this subject before about direct application solar. I've never actually. I've played with. small solar panels and just to see what I could make them do. Little RC cars powered by a little solar panel, something goofy. But I've never actually done an actual device implementation.
Okay.
But I've got lots of ideas now.
Yeah. Yeah, because we can add a couple of devices and make this even more complex. Or
Right.
not complex, but a lot more capable.
Yeah.
Um, would you mind pulling up that the first slide, or I guess the second slide on my direct solar presentation?
Sure. Let's see. We're gonna go.
There we
Woohoo.
go. So for those just listening, I'm going to explain it a little bit more because there's visuals here. But basically, a typical solar system is going to consist of an array. Then you're going to have a DC disconnect, a charge controller, a battery bank, an inverter, a distribution panel, and then you're going to have different loads attached to the home, potentially attached back to the grid. So you've got all these different devices that are fairly complex. They have to be programmed, they have to be set up. You've got to make sure you've got all your voltages right, and you've calculated all your loads, and they're expensive.
And
Those
there's just a lot of
devices,
points of failure in the whole system. There's so many points of failure. Every one of those interfaces.
yeah, and you're essentially becoming your own electrical engineer, right?
Yep.
So not only you're absolutely right, it's points of failure, it's things you have to understand to use them, and it's just a lot of expense too. The batteries and inverters and charge controllers, those are all really expensive.
Plus,
And so if you take those out of the system and you go with direct, you're going straight from your panel, your solar panel, to the load or the device that it's running. And that makes things a ton easier and a ton more simple to understand, and a lot less points of failure, as you pointed out.
yeah, and I
I
really like. We talked about it last week, talking about doing like a ham repeater or something like that. It's like that's a great application. You just say you have a high point on your property or tall tree, whatever. Throw a small little solar panel up there with a with your repeater. That's great.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And you can get these, that makes it just a tiny bit more complex, but you can get these pre-made batteries that take a 12-volt input, and that voltage input
Direct.
can vary. Yeah, direct.
Yeah,
Can
yeah.
vary just a little bit. So then you can get you can have a little battery pack that will keep your repeater going, all night long or during cloudy days.
Yep.
So yeah, you can do a ton with that.
I saw a gal. She posted a video on Instagram. She had replaced the roof of her electric golf cart with a fairly significant size panel, and she's like, "Yeah, I haven't plugged this thing in 3 months,"
Yeah, as a
and she
I think
uses it
that was
all
a
the time.
400
Yeah,
watt panel.
I
Yeah.
think so. It was a big one.
Yeah. That was what Stacy Sustainabling. I don't know how to
It
say the name of her
it may have
channel.
been. Yeah,
Yeah. Um yeah, actually I had asked her about that and she made a whole video on it. So that's very nice of her.
nice.
Um yeah, so now we're talking about potentially putting in some type of charge controller or buck converter if we want to go from a large panel to a system, because large panels like that 400 uh, watt panel are typically going to be a higher voltage or a mismatched voltage to the device that you want to run from it.
Sure.
So one of those large panels is going to run anywhere from about 24 volts up to as high as 56 volts,
Okay.
and sometimes even a little bit more. So I'm going to pull something up on screen here. This is kind of the secret sauce to making these systems really simple and inexpensive, but still being something that you can attain and work on and charge a battery from, or use basically any 12-volt system. So this is what's called a buck converter, and you can pick these up for anywhere between 20 and about $50. My specific type of the buck converter that I like the most is going to be one that converts to 13.8 volts. Jared,
That's
I
a
bet
very
you know why.
specific number.
It is. Yeah,
It's a
can you
really
fill
good
people in
charge
on why?
voltage for a lead acid battery,
Yeah.
and it also carries through lithium.
Yeah. Yeah, because it was such a common voltage for lead acid batteries, like the float voltage for lead acid batteries,
Yep.
a lot of the lithium batteries that have battery management systems on them actually float charge to that as well. So
Yeah.
um, that also means that everything that was ever made for an RV, anything that was made for a vehicle, or anything that was made and called 12 volt, that's a nominal voltage. And usually it's spec to work up to almost 15 volts.
Sure.
So that, and a lot of those things, like, little like little inverters that you put in a car,
Yeah.
if they get much below 12 volts, they'll shut off.
Sure.
And so that 12 volts is really just a nominal voltage. They actually want more than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So these buck converters are great for a few reasons. One, you can get them in a lot of different input voltages. So
Oh,
in
so
my,
for different
go ahead.
like panel sizes.
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
you can get both different amperages and voltages. So based on the panel that you're using, you'll want to pick a buck converter that is appropriate for that panel and appropriate for the output.
Sure.
So most buck converters have a variance of voltage input that they can take. Let's say they're labeled for a 24-volt input.
Right.
Usually they can take, down to maybe 15 and maybe up to 35, somewhere in there.
So is
Um,
that enough to account for like a really cloudy day?
yeah. So most panels, their output voltage doesn't drop dramatically. It's their output voltage that drops pretty dramatically during a cloudier or kind of overcast time.
Okay.
Um, but yes, it can handle that, especially if you get it right. If your buck converter, your input voltage is kind of right in the middle of where your panel is.
Yeah.
But you can also get some are labeled or listed for significant variations in voltage. So I tend to get ones that are labeled for between um, 35 and 90 volts, and
Oh
that way I
wow.
can use that way I can use my higher voltage panels, because I actually have a bunch of 56-volt panels, and so it
Ah.
gives me some flexibility. But I can also use other large panels that tend to be rated in the 40-volt range.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So yeah. Um, anyways, so the output of these, my recommendation is always go with the 13.8-volt output, unless you have some specific reason to only go with 12-volt. Um,
Sure.
yeah. So another thing to note on anything solar that most people don't know, I'm going to pull up another picture here. This is the top of my storage shed, or I should say shipping container or Connex on my property. And I've got 10 panels up there. Well, in theory, I can actually hook all of those 10 panels to one buck converter. Now,
Wow.
you might go, why would you do that? What's the point? And the reason I say that is I can, as long as my voltage is within spec for my buck converter, I can hook all those panels in. They would be in parallel, not in series. So as long as they're in parallel and the voltage meets, if I've got a really cloudy day, the amperage, it can actually keep up with whatever the amperage output of that buck converter would be. So this is a little in the weeds, but basically what I'm saying is you can put more wattage of panels on a buck converter than what the buck converter can actually put out. And
Sure.
it basically means that if you have a cloud that passes over, but you need a little bit more electricity than, or a little bit more power than one panel would put out,
You
you
can
can
do it.
actually, yeah, you can do it. You can stack them. So most people don't know that you can actually put a higher number of panels or wattage into the system than what it's rated for, as long as your voltage is within spec.
Ah, there it is.
If that
Okay.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So, um, anyways, should we talk about a few of the items you can run off of direct
Yeah.
solar with the
Yeah,
buck converter?
you've got a great list.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, this is actually kind of a tiny list. Um,
It's a
do you
good
remember?
inclusive list because it covers a lot of different areas of life.
Yeah. Do you remember the one that you sent me a while ago after going to the class and you're like, oh, you forgot, you
Oh,
missed this one?
the refrigerator.
Yeah.
Yes, I love the idea. So yeah, I found this, silly little refrigerator on Amazon that was designed for automotive use. I'm like, well, wait a minute. If it's automotive use, then like you had said, 12 volts. Like, this is perfect. We could have this insulated, refrigerator, and they have them with Peltier cells or with traditional compressors. But we could have this run directly off of solar, which is a perfect application for overlanders, campers, whatever, where you can just throw a panel out and just hook it directly up. Like, this is
Yep.
great.
Yeah. And in fact, after you said that, I went to a festival that had no power out to where we were. And so
Yeah.
I grabbed one of those off of Facebook Marketplace, hooked it up to a solar panel, and put a little sign by it that said like it is free drinks cooled by the sun or something
Awesome.
like that, where
That's
it's like,
perfect.
kind of backwards, but you start thinking about it and it worked great. I threw waters in there in the morning, and within a couple hours they were all chilled down to nice cold temps. So
Perfect.
yeah. So yeah, that's a great idea. And I went ahead and ran with it. Um,
Awesome.
Another one I'm a huge fan of is water pumps. So, because you can use water kind of like a battery. So if you can pump water during the day when the sun's out up to a tank that's above
Yeah.
your use case, then you've
Right.
got a
Potential
water
energy.
battery.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You've stored the energy that you were using during the day, and now you can use that water via passive systems.
Sure.
So you can move, store, aerate, pressurize water with direct solar.
Hmm.
Fans are another great option. A lot of times when you need fans for, cooling, ventilation, or even solar drying, if you want to do a
Ooh.
dehydrating
Yeah.
system, yeah,
Sure.
and it's perfect because a fan is going to run when the sun's out, which is generally if you're ventilating, that's when you
That's
need.
why you want to ventilate. Yeah.
Yep. One of the things that I found is if you've got a big enough panel, you can actually run you can run a radiator fan from a car because they're
Oh,
12
sure.
volts.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah, but they're high throughput, so they'll put more air through
Oh, yeah, they are.
than like one of those big box fans for your window.
Right.
So, and they're quite a bit smaller, so they're great for ventilation or for, let's say you want to dry out firewood. You can take one of the cheap panels. You see those panels on my uh, shed there.
Yeah.
Those cost me $10, so they're really inexpensive. You could throw a
Wow.
few of those over your wood pile, hook up some radiator fans, and actually
And just
dry out your green wood really
blow.
fast.
Yeah. Sure.
Yep, and have it covered from rain. So just one of those odd use cases.
No, that's
Um,
great.
yeah. Jared, do you want to cover communications? Because I think this is more your area than mine.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, like, if you've got power, you can charge systems, you can run systems. So yeah, you could run. Well, I've got in the shop, I've got the small solar panels that have just direct USB outputs, so you can
Yeah.
just plug your phone directly into it, tablet. Several of the radios that I sell also have USB Type C charging capabilities, so you could just plug directly in. You don't have to run through anything else. You just plug it in, and then like you said, with like a ham repeater, that's an easy one. You just have to adequately size your panel, and you're ready to go. Starlink, during the recovery in the Carolinas and Tennessee after that hurricane, a small solar and a Starlink was critical to a lot of people living, honestly, because they were able to get communication up, and because communication is the first thing to fail and the most important thing to have, we were able to restore that and get that critical information into where it needed to get into, and we could figure out who needed what, where, how, and get that done because we had communication. So yeah, no, that
Yeah.
solar is a perfect application for this.
Yeah. And now that you mention it with the hurricane and things, Sean Mills and I we were at the Self Reliance Festival together
Yeah.
right afterwards. And we were
Oh,
talking about all all the contaminated water,
Uh,
all the surface water was contaminated, but we figured, well water wouldn't necessarily be. So you can
not for a
use,
while.
yeah. Um, so you could use a direct solar well pump, and
Sure.
there's something called a linear current booster, which are a very inexpensive controller that hooks directly to a DC well pump
Yeah.
and basically just waits until there's enough power from the panel to turn the pump on.
And pushes
Um,
until, yeah.
yep, and it goes until there's not enough power from the panel.
Mhm. And if you
So
can
it just
buffer that with then you can have a battery, then it definitely elongates that time. Hmm.
Yep. So we kind of come up with a system. I don't think it ever ended up getting deployed, but I know he was out there for a few weeks helping with
Awesome.
stuff, and there was a lot of wells that it could have probably been deployed into.
Sure.
Um,
Well, and then if you've got a pump, then there's a lot of filtration systems that rely on pressure.
mhm.
So then you have the ability of filtering large amounts of water fairly rapidly.
Yeah, exactly. And again, if you're pumping water uphill to a tank,
Hmm.
now you've got some pressure to fill other things downhill from that. So
Sure. Yeah. Your solar powered shower system that you just did.
yeah,
That's yeah. I mean, like you have hot water and pressurized water. It's done.
yeah, exactly. And in fact, so on the video, it's showing right now that bathroom system that's fully off grid. And what I did is I used 3 solar panels, a buck converter. So I'm showing the buck converter here again as well. And then I used, I'm just going to see if I can pull up the image quick so people can see it. Um, and add, where's the add button? There we go. So you can actually see the inside of that system now. There's a breaker, a buck converter, and a $30 lawnmower battery, which is about the cheapest decent lead acid battery you can get locally from Walmart.
That's all you need,
Um,
though.
yeah, and that system is hooked together so that battery and the panels all together then run a 12-volt pump. They run a. It's. I wish I could, put my cursor on the screen, but between the buck converter and the battery is actually a little car cigarette lighter adapter, and so now I can plug in any USB device. So whether it's a
That's
phone,
funny.
whether it's those little USB battery banks you can plug any of those things in and charge them up probably multiple times with that little lawnmower battery. And if there's any sun out at all, those three panels are charging things up.
Ooh, yeah, way more than enough
So
for that. Yeah.
yeah, it's almost 1,000 watts of solar going through a buck converter that I think can output 250 watts.
Oh, gee.
So even if it's cloudy, that buck converter can pretty much output at full capacity. So
Yeah. Which is
it's
always a
a
good thing to do to oversize your panels so that
mhm,
you can compensate for those cloudy days.
right, and because panels are so cheap, right?
Yeah.
Like there, you can get them used for almost nothing at this point.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
it was actually cheaper on. I'm going to go back to showing the overhead of the off grid bathroom. Those 3 panels were dramatically cheaper than putting an actual roof on the structure. So those are the actual roof. And what's also kind of fun is they're slightly transparent in
So
the
you have
little
natural ambient
notches.
light.
Yeah, exactly. So like this picture inside, you can see
Yeah.
that there's light shining through, and the light you see in there is primarily coming through those panels. So yeah, it's a really fun little project. I've actually got several more things running off of this. There's a motion sensing 12-volt light that runs off of this as well. There is a water heater that the igniter runs off of this system. So everything is tied in the bathroom with this one little system. And I should also say we'll post video links to this project because I have this whole project, um, a full video walkthrough on the build there.
Mm.
And I've got some other videos on the more simple buck converters as well as just straight fans being hooked up to 12-volt solar and things like that. So we'll have all that in the show notes.
Awesome.
I've got to get through this list. I'm dragging my feet on it. So here is a few of the other things that you can run um, off of the system once you put a buck converter in it to convert the voltage to what you want it to. Um, so Jared had mentioned communications, also vehicles. So you can keep your batteries topped off on any 12-volt vehicle. So car, tractor, ATV batteries, even golf cart batteries. So they're going to be a higher voltage, but you can get buck converters that are made for those voltages, and they're still pretty inexpensive. So you can keep all of those things topped off with just a buck converter and a solar panel hooked straight up to those vehicles. Anything USB. So just about anything you can imagine nowadays can be bought USB powered, which is pretty
Yep.
cool. So you know, lights, flashlights, battery banks, hand warmers, fans, heated blankets, tire inflators, so much more you can do off of USB. I mean, that's just a tiny list. Um, but as I've said already, I'm a big fan of the power banks, like the USB power banks that
Oh
you can
yeah.
charge your phones off of.
Oh yeah.
If you charge those up during the day off a USB off of one of these systems, now you can, run all your communications or other devices like a heated blanket all night long off of one
Right.
of those little power banks. So
Yep.
if power's out and you need a heated blanket underneath another pile of blankets because it's really cold in the winter, that's a really viable way of actually getting through a hard time.
Or even just, generic camping. I mean,
Yeah,
laying on the ground sucks the heat right out of you. So
that's
if you
right.
can create that thermal barrier, if you can create, have a hot pad or something that you can lay on, oh yeah. So then you're, out playing around. You throw your, fold up 45-watt panel out on the ground to charge up your, 30,000 milliamp hour battery bank
Yeah.
during the day. Then you come at night and you just plug right into it and you got yourself a nice warmer place to sleep.
Yeah. In fact, so when I was at the festival that I was mentioning earlier, since I didn't have power, I actually had a brooder full of chicks there, and they needed heat overnight.
Oh yeah.
So I put a 400-watt panel on top of my trailer because I have a trailer that I converted into a brooder, and
Perfect.
instead of using like a 300-watt light or heat lamp inside of it, I swapped that out for, I think it was an 8-watt, like it's for lizards. It's a lizard heat pad.
Okay, yeah,
And
sure.
so I put that within a box within the brooder, and it kept the chicks plenty warm. They all piled in on top of the thing, and my battery lasted all night. And it was just another way to approach something. And when you're using these systems, if you can find low power devices that still do what you need them to, you
Right.
can get a lot further with them. So we already kind of mentioned any 12 volt, anything that's labeled as 12 volts, you
Mhm.
can run off of these things. So tire inflators, small inverters, chargers, refrigerators, lights, things like that. You can charge up AA and AAA batteries.
Mhm.
So you can get rechargeable batteries that either charge via USB or via 12-volt cigarette lighter. Um,
Yeah, I've got,
whole,
18650s that are USB, C chargeable,
yep.
there's 9 volts that are USB-C chargeable, like, yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah, exactly. So that can, just having a panel and a buck converter and a cigarette lighter, push in piece, um, you can keep yourself going for a really long time if you've got all these different USB devices that work on solar. So, yeah, I'm a huge fan of those systems and what you can charge simply. Whole house heater, I've actually got a video on how you can use just a panel and a small battery, basically
Ooh.
an old car battery, lawnmower battery, whatever, to keep your house heated with a diesel heater. So it'll run
Ah,
the fans and igniter and things. Um, and so you can basically keep as long as you've got diesel, which is really efficient with these heaters, you can heat your whole house. And I actually did that for several months this winter, kind of as a test just to see, does it actually work? And so I've got a whole video on that that'll be in the show notes as well. And then finally, a hugely overlooked preparedness item, which is power
Yes.
tools.
Yes.
Yeah. So you can get cigarette lighter plugs for power tool batteries for their chargers. And so you can charge up batteries that you can use for lights and fans and all kinds of little doodads that you can get
Well,
for
and
your
how
power
many,
tools.
like, you go into my garage and it's just a wall of DeWalt batteries just because that was the system that I had. And so every time you buy a drill, you get a battery. So
Right.
I've got hundreds and hundreds of amp hours of batteries and they're all just ready to go.
Yep.
And if I can solar charge them, then they're always ready to go.
Yeah. Well, and I think sometimes people have like a remote outbuilding that doesn't necessarily have power.
Right.
And so now you could charge up DeWalt batteries and you can get all kinds of off brand, like lights or USB devices. So a little piece you can put on top, a little hood that
Yeah.
has a USB charger as well. So all
Or even a
kinds of
full on
cool.
inverter. So you have receptacles.
Yep. Yeah. I've got one of those for my Craftsman stuff. You've
Yeah.
got, it's 150 watts, but for certain things, it works great.
Absolutely.
I've run my laptop off of it a few times.
Nice.
All right, so that's direct solar. I tried my best to keep it short. I kind of failed, but whatever. Um, the next section of the three options I want to talk about was solar generators, um, which I kind of hate the name because they're not really solar generators. The panels
No.
are the generators, but
Yes.
um, just so everybody knows what we're talking about, you can buy these pre-made kits that have it's just a box, but it's got all the different various parts you need in it. So you can hook up a solar panel or you can plug them in directly to the wall. So you're basically charging a battery that also has a built in inverter system. So you can run standard items off of that during an emergency or in remote locations for camping. Um, there's
And
all,
I
go
get
ahead.
it because it's a one and done thing. You don't have
Mhm.
to, like we had talked about earlier, like balancing loads and against panel size and battery banks and wattage and current. And it can be very overwhelming. And so
Yeah.
having this one and done solution, it's already done for you. Here's the panel, here's the battery. You're good. Go. It's
Right.
really nice.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're really handy, especially if you don't know solar. One of my issues with them is not only are they a lot more expensive per basically per watt or per
Yeah.
usable watt than something you can build yourself, but my other issue is they sell proprietary solar panels for them, and
That.
those they're really expensive. You know, I obviously can get a really good deal at 3 cents a watt for the solar panels that you can see on top of the building here. And that's not typical, but 15, 25 cents a watt for used panels that you can get, or I think anywhere around probably what, 35, 40 cents a watt.
Yeah.
If you're purchasing new online,
Yeah.
is a lot better than the, what is it, like
Several dollars.
five
Yeah.
to $6 you're generally paying for the panels, and they're
Unfortunately, yes.
proprietary and they're tiny. And so that's one of my big complaints with solar generators.
Yep.
And
Agreed.
interestingly, if you just have a little bit of know-how, um, you can take that solar generator and you can hook up a standard panel to it by using the buck converter system that I mentioned earlier.
Right.
So you can take
So that all they
these.
really need to do is just contact Ryan Steve at thehomesteadconsultant.com and
Yeah, well, and I'm
shameless
hoping
plug.
to do some videos to make this easier for people. But if you take the buck converter, you get the right voltage for your panel and the right output for your solar generator. Then you just clip on one of the connectors. So there's a variety of connectors that the different manufacturers use, but you just clip on their connectors, plug it into your solar generator, and you've got a nice big panel that's going to charge it much faster and make it a
Much
lot more.
faster.
Yep, and it's a ton cheaper. So
Yes.
just a little
And more
nugget there.
robust. Typically those panels, because I sell some of those, flexible panels. they're
Mhm.
good for certain applications, not
Yes.
for permanent installations. That is
Yes.
not one of the yeah, do not buy those and expect them to just sit up, handle inclement weather, to handle, continued exposure, continued use. It's not going to last.
No. Yeah. Actually, why don't you run us through some of the scenarios where it makes sense to pay a bit extra for like foldable or transportable type
Well,
stuff?
yeah, yeah. So like, so in my case, I backpack sometimes, and when I do, I have a small 15-watt panel set that I hang off the back of my backpack, which is great because it keeps up my GPS or more my cell phone, my tablet, whatever I've got going. Or maybe I get to my campsite and I want to be able to charge up the laptop. The kids want to have a movie, so we bring the projector, something silly. So I have a 45-watt, or maybe like we had talked about with the refrigerator, I've got a 300-watt, that's a quad fold up, the thing is like, I don't know, 3 feet by 2 feet, I think, folded up, and it unfolds 4 times. So it's 4 panels, 300 watts. It's,
Sure.
it's a good install for, temporary use. It's not a system that's going to handle, snow loads. It's not a system that's going to be, handle continuous UV exposure even,
Yeah.
because usually what ends up breaking down isn't the panel itself, it's the adhesives they used, or it's
Right.
the fabric that they enclosed it with. Those will start to degrade and fall apart, and now you have exposed wires, so you have, something that's going to break. It's just it they're not used, they're not designed for that use.
Yeah. Like long term
Mhm.
continual use. Yeah.
Yep.
That makes sense. So, um, where was I on that? I don't know.
Well, and
Anyways,
something you had mentioned was the connector types. You wanna, jump
yeah.
to the different connecting standards, because this is something that it's kind of in the weeds, but it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're right. So with the solar generators, there's four primary connectors. I did a bit of research on this to figure out what were the most common and how can you hack their system essentially to get better, more affordable solar panels connected. So the first and most common in general with solar is the MC4, which replaced the MC3, which you really don't see anymore. But the MC4 are those they look like barrels, but they clip together. They're waterproof. They're a great connector, but they're a little clunky to connect a system, which is why a lot of these solar generators end up using something like the XT60, which generally when you see that kind of that orange rectangle on the side of a solar generator, that's usually going to be an XT60. Um, there's also an Anderson plug, which are going to be the red and black push connectors. Those are actually a really nice connector, but they're a little different than the MC4. And then some of these companies are using barrel plugs that look kind of like a laptop plug. And generally speaking, you can get on Amazon adapters from typically you're going to go from MC4 to that variant of whichever connection type you need for your given solar generator. So, yeah, like you said, it's a little in the weeds, but it's actually really good to know because it can save you a lot of money and make these systems work a lot better.
Yeah, well, you have the option of swapping out from, like I said, their own, system to yours that's a little bit bigger, a little more robust. Awesome.
Yeah. And then I was going to show this picture again. We've harped on this a little bit, but this effectively is a solar generator, right?
Yes.
If I just hook up a like a little inverter for a car to this little system that I've got, it's going to do basically the same thing for a much lower cost. And I can put this in a little toolbox or something, and build it up to make it look nice. Uh, Jay Fleming is saying Anderson or XT60 all day. Yeah, those are actually they're both really nice connectors. It's just it's annoying to have like four or five different types of connectors you have to know
Yeah.
to adapt these systems. So it's not a big deal. Again, you can get them pre-made on Amazon. So
Yes.
and for like $5 to $10, so they're not bad. Um, but yeah, you can basically set up a little system like this that's um, its own little solar generator, and you can build that bigger and bigger depending on what you want. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next section, which is critical load solar. So,
You had mentioned
um,
this when we were talking. This is
mhm.
I don't know why I had never really considered doing a segmented system. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I want to hear your thoughts on it because
Oh, because it's great. So okay, and correct me if I'm wrong. Um, the idea is pulling all of your critical systems from your house and creating a sub panel that can then be run off of solar. So now you have your costs offset because all of those critical systems are being powered by solar. And then you don't have a failure in the case where, TVA sucks and their power fails.
Tennessee Valley Authority, which is the
Yeah.
power
Oh,
company in the area,
yes.
for those who aren't from the
Who aren't from
region.
around here.
Yeah, PG&E for those who are in California.
About in California,
Yeah.
yeah. So it really is. It's a good application where you segment
Mhm.
out those critical systems. Now, identifying those critical systems and properly sizing your system for it, but then you don't have to have this massive, 10 kW or bigger, array. It's like, well, I only have like a couple K worth of, requirements. So I only need, maybe I'll go, a little oversized so that way I can share or I can recharge some batteries or whatever else.
Right. Yeah, I like to think of this as the real solar generator. So I we call it critical load solar. Um, but if you think of the things that you would run on a generator if your power went out, so that would be refrigerator, freezer, maybe some lights in the house, some fans, maybe your internet, any type of medical device, so oxygen, CPAP, stuff like that. Though, like we talked about last time, part of preparedness is actually getting yourself in good health. So if something goes bad, you're not as hurt. But um, that aside, you take all of those things that you want to run. Maybe you have a well on your property, so that's your water source, and you size your system for those things. But then you remove the really hard to run things like your air conditioner or your electric water heater. Um, those things that aren't critical or crucial and take a ton of extra power. Well, now you can use a very small solar system comparatively to run the things you need to run. And maybe if you really want to go all out, you size it big enough that you could run like a window air conditioner unit, and you put that window air conditioner unit in one room, one bedroom where you can, your whole family can sleep in comfort and not, basically get way too hot in the summer.
Right.
Um, which may not be as big of an issue, I don't know, in Wisconsin as it is in, here in Tennessee or
Right.
south of us. So,
Well, and then
yeah,
Select Solar, they have the Solar Direct EC4. So you
yeah,
can have that mini split that's designed to be run on solar with a AC failover, so that if your solar's insufficient or for other applications, then it actually can. So you could offset it with having it on its own.
yep, no, absolutely. So yes, EG4 makes a inverter. What is it? Inverter mini split system that is
Mhm.
hybrid. So
Yep.
as long as the sun's out, you can run off of what, 5 or 6 panels, something like that.
It was
Um,
pretty light. Yeah, it wasn't
yeah,
bad.
yeah. So pretty much by itself. So that's an option you can tack on and build on. The other cool thing about a critical load system, and I'll talk a little bit more about what it looks like. But another really cool thing about that is some of these systems now are you can basically bolt on to them. So we'll put a video link in the description of a video I did where I did a full install of the system that I recommend, which is an EG4 300 or 3000 watt inverter charge controller with LifePo 4 battery. And that thing you can bolt on, I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's either 16 or 36 or 32 inverter charge controllers they can work together and power the same system. So they talk to each other. They're really inexpensive right now. I think they're like $700 each, which is crazy.
It is.
And they can take up to, I think, 5,000 watts of solar to charge the batteries. So they're these really great systems that are inexpensive enough that, say down the road you have 1,500 more bucks to put towards your preparedness or towards your solar system. You can put another battery on it, or you can put another inverter on it. And so you can build that system, and now you can move more things over to that sub panel that you're running from off of your main panel, or separated from your main panel that you're running on solar.
Sure.
The other reason I really like the system that I'm talking about is that it can be plugged in as an appliance to the grid. So basically, if it doesn't have to be 100% off grid, you can actually plug it into the grid without any type of licensing or permits or whatever else. You plug it in like you plug in a refrigerator, and then you program it. So if your battery drops below, I don't know, let's say 20%, or you can program it to 30%, it'll top up off the grid. And the benefit in that is you can learn, you know, how to manage your system so that if you do, like, if power goes out for a week because of a ice storm, now you know what your system can actually handle, or you can upgrade your system to make sure that it can handle all the systems that you want to run off of it.
Sure.
So I'm a huge fan of that, and I've set some up for, I think, under 2,500 bucks.
Oh, that's not bad.
No,
That
no, and when you
yeah.
think of a generator, you've got to have fresh gasoline, you've got to run it consistently, you've got to make sure that it's in good shape, and having something like this doesn't cost that much more than a generator, and it's always topped off. It's always essentially ready to go when power
Right.
goes out.
Yeah. Very little maintenance. Yeah. Very little overhead.
Yep. And so obviously it's going to include things like a charge controller, inverter, battery system. But again, the system that I'm talking about, which I've got a video for people to watch if they want to, combines a lot of those things. So it makes the system a lot more simple.
Cool.
Um, maybe, do you think people understand what a sub panel is and what that means, or should we explain that a little further?
Oh, that's probably a good call. Probably should explain.
Go for it.
So basically, you have your main panel in your house. A sub panel is just segmenting a certain portion of that power requirement to a certain set of circuits. So that could be like Ryan had said, maybe this is going just to a certain area of the house, or maybe this is going to specific items in the house, whether it's like all of your lighting, or maybe it's part of your lighting, maybe it's part of your lighting and some of your receptacles, maybe, so it's just a sub part of your total power load.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's a good way of putting it. So, um, I don't
Ooh,
know.
you know
There's a
what?
couple other things that I'd like to for people to, if they're watching this, to get to know. So like, so how to understand some of the jargon within solar and within
There's so much
electrical
jargon.
systems. There is. So I don't know how to sort through all of it, but one of the things that I think I can point people towards is the idea of Ohm's law. So
Mm,
Ohm's law is basically a set of different mathematical calculations, and you don't need to know all of Ohm's law to understand how it works. It's actually fairly simple, um, and there are some good videos out there. So if you want to understand, how amperage works, how voltage works, how wattage works, like how all those things essentially work together to get our electrical systems functioning. Um, that's my, like, go look up Ohm's law. Start doing a little bit of digging on YouTube, and there's some people who have actually broken that down. But um, Jared, do you have any good ways of explaining Ohm's law to people?
um, a good way to so my dad always used plumbing as an example for electricity, because people have a better visual grasp on water. than
Hmm.
they do on electricity because it's so ethereal. So the way he described the way electricity works is you have a pipe and you have water flowing through it, and it's the amount of pressure that's pushing that water is your voltage. The amount of overall water that's flowing through it is your current, and then resistance is resistance. It's the diameter of that pipe. So the more you squeeze it, the higher your resistance. It's going to change the amount of pressure and how it builds up in the system.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. And so getting a larger cable can allow more amps, kind of like getting a larger hose is going to allow more
Yeah, you
water
got a
through
fire
with less
hose versus,
resistance.
a little, sprinkler hose is very different.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And so voltage is basically the pressure that's behind the water pushing it forward.
Yeah, because you could have really low pressure, really low voltage, huge amount of current. Like your fire hose going really slowly, it's a huge amount of water. It's just not being pushed hard. But you
Hmm.
increase your resistance, put an inline, something in there. It's going that pressure is going to build up. You're going to end up with a jet of very small amount of water coming out, but it's going to be a higher pressure.
Yeah.
So you get that relationship between flow, volume, and velocity, I guess, speed on the other side of the resistance.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good way of explaining it. So, in the case of solar, for example, let's say I wanted to put some panels out, but I don't have anywhere close to my house. And so I need to put them a couple 100 feet away. Well, I'd be better off running higher voltage over that cable than I would higher amperage. So
Yeah, and that gets trickier because yeah, what you're talking about is your loss over distance, and that's where it is actually better to convert to AC just for that. If you're going to go long distances, having microinverters and running AC is definitely got its uses. But
sure.
yeah, you're right. Having larger diameter cable allows for higher current, which means that you're running lower voltage, which means you have less overall um, issues with resistance. So going further is going to result in less loss.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the reasons I really like the EG4 3000 volt or 3000 watt inverter
Yes.
is it can take up to 500 volts from your panels. So
Wow.
you can hook up your panels in series. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, in
Hmm.
series.
So high
So
voltage.
yep. So every time if you hook one panel to the next panel to the next panel in series, it adds the voltage of each panel together. And so if I had let's see, uh, four panels at 50 volts, if I put them in series, I'm going to have 200 volts.
Hmm.
And so that 200 volts, that higher voltage, can carry over. Let's say it's the same size conductor, it can carry over that conductor with less loss of energy because it's essentially like higher pressure in your hose. So you get the same amount of electricity on the other end, but without either not having to increase the size of the wire or being able to run it a further distance with the same loss. So yeah, upping your voltage by hooking your panels a specific way, if your system can handle it, is a great way to reduce loss over distance on your wiring.
Hmm.
Hopefully that makes sense.
Definitely.
Um,
Nice. Did you see Jay's question?
yeah, I'm not exactly sure, Jay, if you could clarify thoughts on a good combiner surge units. I'm not exactly sure what that means. So, um, what a surge unit or a combiner unit would be, and what type of system. So, happy to answer it if you can clarify that a bit for us. Um, Jared, do you think there's anything that we have not touched on that I've missed here that we should cover?
I I just I like solar purely because like you said, it's not like a generator that it runs out of gas or the gas goes bad, where you don't have to do monthly, load cycling. Um, it's just it's a nice system, especially when you talk about like your critical load systems where you're off, you're basically removing those pieces from your electric bill. You're
Hmm.
just going to run them off of solar, and yeah, you have the batteries with the grid tie so that there's a, snowstorm, covers your panels up. You still get your batteries topped up and they're
Right.
good to go. But yeah, no, I think that solar is really a good, and now that panels have become so much cheaper than they were. Because I remember when we finally got panels for under $1 a watt, I was stoked. I mean,
Right.
I was like so happy. Now, how much were you paying? Three
Well, the ones you
cents?
see in the picture there, 3 cents a watt.
I can't even, like, that doesn't
Yeah.
like, at that point, like, I just coat my roof, like, yeah, why not? Why not?
Yeah. Well, and at 3 cents a watt, those are monocrystalline panels too. So those are a higher
Right?
quality panel than most.
Yeah.
Um,
What do you think about biface?
I think they're excellent for snowy regions.
Sure, where you have a lot of
Yeah.
reflected light.
Yeah.
Makes
Um,
sense.
I think as if price goes down, they make more sense. Right now they're a little bit pricey
Sure.
for the benefit you get from them. But people are doing all kinds of cool stuff with them, like just standing them like straight
Standing
up.
them
Let's
up,
see,
yeah,
straight up like this.
so the
And
sun
so
goes right
as
over
the
the top of
azimuth
them.
of the sun passes
Yeah.
over, yeah, you combine that with the traditional system where you get the most output middle of the day, whereas this system gets more output on,
During through the whole, yeah,
sorry, either end of the day. Um, you can balance out your load through the day. So there's really cool things you can do with it. But if you've got a freestanding array in a snowy region, what'll happen is the light will reflect off of the snow and
right.
actually heat up those panels because as they produce electricity, they heat up.
Yep.
And so oftentimes it will melt the ice and snow off of the panels. Um, and you'll get production during the day, even if they're snowed over. So I like them for for that circumstance. And I think they're
Yep.
definitely worth the extra cost. Um,
Definitely.
yeah. Oh, and I was also going to say, as far as you were talking about the critical load system, and I think those
Mhm.
are great, but also having the solar bathroom or the solar bathroom. So we've got a shower, we've got a composting outhouse. It's all really comfortable. It's got lights in it. But the other cool thing is if power truly goes out and we need to charge a phone or charge a USB battery bank or whatever, we've
Mm.
got this thing already set up. And
Oh, yeah, sure.
it doesn't have to be a solar bathroom. You could just throw a few panels on top of your shed, use it to charge your power tool batteries, but have it as that backup in case you need to charge up your phone or battery bank or whatever else
Sure.
for
Yeah,
a
I've
true
I've got that little
emergency.
barn out back. That would be a great application for that little barn. It
Yeah.
doesn't have any
And
power to it, so throwing a couple panels up on top of it be easy.
yeah, and it doesn't even have the right like solar aspect,
No.
but who cares, right?
Right.
You're not trying to get every last ounce of power out of your panel during the day. You're just trying to use it to top a few things off and have it as a backup.
Yeah,
So,
because 'cause I've got all of my gardening stuff out there, so, I've got my weed eater out there. Well, I can have my batteries being charged out there.
yep. All right. So, Jay Fleming
Ah,
gave us a little bit more information. So, I thought
Jay's
that's
awesome.
maybe what you meant, but I wasn't sure. Um, I don't have any specifics that I really like. There's lots of combiner boxes out there.
Sure.
Ideally, I like to have one that has some type of breaker in it so that you can turn the breaker off and work with things inside.
Yeah,
Um,
that is a good feature.
yep. But I don't have one that I'm specifically fond of. Um, again, I like to, if I can, I run my panels in series to get whatever the highest voltage that the system can take. And in a lot of cases, that actually reduces or eliminates the need for a combiner box. So sorry, I don't have any specific recommendations on that. There's a bunch of stuff out there, and I haven't found one that I'm more fond of than another. So, if anybody else has questions, if you get them in
Yeah,
quick, we'll answer
this
them.
is definitely the time to ask questions if you got them. Well,
So,
and kind of like to your point, it's like then you have solar. Like if
mhm,
just do something small like this, where yeah, you're charging up your DeWalt batteries or whatever, but then you have it so that if you have an emergency, hey, I've got power. It's here. We're
yeah,
we're gonna live. Might not be comfortable. We might wish we had grabbed a couple more panels, but it'll be better than nothing.
yeah. No, and even thinking about this, like let's say you've got an RV or something in the backyard,
Oh yeah, right.
throw a 400-watt panel out on the ground, or set up against something. It'll keep the batteries topped off so they won't get damaged. But then again, now you've got a battery and a solar panel where you could charge things from it if you needed to.
Yeah. Our church, has these, minivans for, transporting people around, and that battery was always dying. I was like, "Well, why don't we just get one of the little solar panels and throw it, on the dash and just plug it in through the cigarette lighter?"
Yeah.
That that's a thing? Like, you can do that? Yeah, you can do that. Let's do that. So I just
Yeah.
went and found him one and, like, "It's great. It's always charged up." Like,
I
"Yeah,
love
I
that.
know."
A lot of people ask about putting solar panels on the roof of their vehicle.
Yeah.
Um, Not a great idea, generally speaking. Um,
Why not?
uh, I see overlanders do it, like the
Yes.
trucks.
Oh, yeah.
And that's fine. You want to be 100% absolutely certain that it is mounted in such a way that, you driving it 80 miles an hour against a 40-mile-an-hour headwind
Oh,
won't,
yeah.
won't grab it, rip it up, and throw it into your, the vehicle behind you into their windshield.
Yeah, that is a
Uh,
heavy and, potentially very sharp projectile.
exactly. So if you're thinking of doing that, you have to make sure that your mounts are absolutely flawless. And I'd say stick with a smaller panel, maybe consider like a backup system so that if it somehow rips off the first mount, there's something that it runs into. I don't know. I
Right.
don't recommend it, but yeah. I did mount a 400-watt panel to the top of my mobile brooder, but I'm not going 80 miles an hour down the
Sure,
interstate with that. So,
sure.
um,
So what are your thoughts on, like, the RVs that run, they'll run kW's worth of panels?
yeah. I mean, again, I guess it's just mount it, be
Sketchy,
really careful, be aware.
right?
Make sure that your mounts are rock solid because that's a concern for sure.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Looks like Jay Fleming says he uses a
Single
single
540.
540 runs my entire barn. I assume you're talking about a little solar generator, but I'm not familiar with that specific model. But yeah, I was just talking with somebody, Jared, you sent him my
Mm.
way, who's got a
Oh,
little solar generator, and they were trying to figure out how to adapt it so they could run like lights and a milking machine in their barn.
awesome.
Um,
I know exactly who you were talking to.
yeah,
Sweet.
which is a great option. I've talked with several people about if you've got a little barn, either a solar generator or like, again, keep coming back to it, a little system like this
Right.
that's really cheap, really easy to set up. I think that everything you see in that picture cost me under $100, and that includes the panels. So
And that's
that's,
huge because you can
yeah.
spend so much money on some of these systems.
Hmm. Yep. And some of the systems I've seen, I don't know how you say it, Blue Yeti,
Blue
whatever.
Eddy yeah, I know what you're
Yeah.
talking about. Yeah.
Um, Somebody sent me a question about one of those, and I started looking into it, and it's like, I don't know, probably 1 out of 9 of them die after just sitting for a while,
Ooh.
and nobody's figured out exactly why.
Is it
So,
parasitic oh, okay, they haven't figured it out. I'd say because
yeah.
a lot of those systems, unfortunately, like, when they have self-monitoring or anything like
Mhm.
that, or it's an active system, they just you know, they kill themselves, they drain
Yeah.
themselves. So,
Yeah. Then they
keep it
turn off
charged.
and, right. And then they won't recharge because the system can't turn on and it
Right.
becomes, yeah. Whereas the system that's on screen right now, like it's a dumb system. So it just charges as long as the battery is still
Uh-huh.
functional. It just
Right.
it just sends charge to it and it charges. So there's something to be said for a stupid simple system like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yep,
That's
exactly.
it's army
So
proof, right?
what's that?
It's army proof.
Army proof. Are we making fun of our military?
I always get to make fun of army.
Yep.
when,
Yeah,
when they
you
had to
have the
pay us
right to. I don't. I was going to say something
when they
about
paid us
Marines,
extra
but
because we were on an army base, yeah, I get to make fun of them.
that's funny. Yep. No, I was going to say something mean about Marines and wondering if it was
Oh,
Marine proof, but
yeah, it's
we'll
safe
leave
as
that.
long as it's not a made of crayons. Then they won't eat it.
I didn't say that. That
Nope,
wasn't
that
me.
was me.
Yeah.
All me.
I have no
All
right to
right,
speak here.
you're good. You're good. All
Uh,
right. Is there anything else that we want to cover? Or?
I think that's about it. Of course, we could do deep dives into
Oh
the
yes,
other
we could.
topics, but that's for another day. So,
Sure, sure.
um, yeah, I think I'm done. Jared, do you want to tell people what you do, how they can find you, all that stuff?
Absolutely. All right. I am Jared Wilson. I am the owner and proprietor of Resilient Living. We have a small store here in Middle Tennessee, right off of 111 between Spencer and Sparta, where we sell solar panels for one, and just general preparedness items and outdoor camping kind of gear. Whole selection of books for gardening and preparedness, and you can find us at resilientliving.com, and you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I think that's all of them. Some derivation of resilient living or resilient living, because sometimes someone else took the one with the G and I had to I had to drop my G.
Yep. So your website, you've dropped the G, so that's
Yep,
resilientliving.com.
living. Yes, sir.
Cool. No, I actually kind of like that nomenclature.
It
It's
sounds
easy to
southern, right?
remember.
It's
Yeah,
living. It's
exactly.
living.
Yep. Well, my name is Ryan Steva. I am the homestead consultant from homesteadconsultant.com. And so it's easy to find my website, pretty much any of the socials. If you just search the homestead consultant, you'll find me. But my um, biggest spot is YouTube, which is likely what you're watching this on right now. So I would absolutely love a subscribe on there. And if you're watching it on YouTube, go find Jared's channel as well, the Resilient Living channel, and like it there. I think I can put a link in the description when this all, it'll be after this airs, but then you can find his information as well. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one. We're trying to do these every Tuesday night at
Mm-hmm.
6 p.m. Central. So tune in then, and you can see us talk about whatever our next topic is going to be.
Sounds
All right.
good.
Thanks, everybody.